Hi, this is Beth with Bourbon Creek Crafts, back today with another project share on how I used up a whole 12 by 12 paper pad. I am a scrapbooker, and so mostly what I have is 12 by 12 paper, and I've become a paper hoarder and decided that I really need to start using some of this pretty paper up. So at the beginning of 2018, I decided I was going to try and use up at least one full paper pad every month. And this month's pad is Indie Chic by My Mind's Eye. And I've had this for several years, and it's, beautiful colors, very vibrant. It's got a lot of embossed detail with glitter. And so I decided that this is the one I was going to use this month, and it has 48 sheets in it. When I start a big project like this, one of the ways I start is I just flip through the whole paper pad and see if any of the pages speak to me for any project in particular. Like, there are some pages that have like larger details that are great for 12 by 12 scrapbook pages. Sometimes you'll have cut aparts that just would work great on a card. Sometimes you have solid colors or very subtle backgrounds that would make great like matte backgrounds for the cards. And then sometimes there's just, you're not sure how you want to use a lot of the paper. So when I flip through it, I kind of sort it out based on the things that I know I want to use certain paper for, and then there's usually a pile of just not sure, I'm going to use it for whatever. And then I go through and I cut up all of the cut apart pages and then kind of decide how I want to use those as well. And this process to use this pad, it was over the course of 16 days. I don't know the total number of hours, but that 16 days, it was kind of in small increments, anywhere from like 5 minutes just to finish a card while I was waiting for dinner to cook, or every once in a while I got some bigger chunks of time, like several hours, that I could actually really get into it and make some progress. But it does take some time, but I got a whole lot out of it, and I got to work with this beautiful paper and used up some of my stash. One of the other things I like to do is I go through my stash and pull out any embellishments I have that might coordinate with these papers. I struggled with that on this one a little bit, just because the colors of the orange, and I have a lot of pink because I love pink, but I didn't have a lot of this deep pink. But I did find some die cuts that I already had, some flower die cuts or paper flowers, some sequins and things like that. So we'll kind of dig into what I did get out of this project. I managed to get 10 12 by 12 scrapbook pages out of it. This was one of those larger patterns that I thought would be perfect for a 12 by 12 page because I didn't want to have to cut up those patterns. This one, I just thought that the gray coordinated really well with the yellow in their dresses. I got several pages made with pictures, and then several that I didn't put pictures on, but I cut mats and put those on. So all I have to do is lay a 4 by 6 picture on, add some journaling and a title, and I'm done. This page was actually an afterthought because I had a lot of little squares, and I happened to find some pictures where I could really crop the pictures down to like a 3 by 3 size as well. And so that was kind of a happy accident well into the project. But I did not work in any particular order when working through this pad. I just kind of went with what happened to speak to me at the moment, I guess. Kind of jumped around from thing to thing based on time and mood. But I'm going to save the cards for last. But some of the other fun things that I got out of this project were wine bottle tags. I don't know about you, but a bottle of wine is a go-to gift for me to say thank you, happy birthday, Merry Christmas, sorry you had a bad day. And you can find templates for this online. Print out the template, cut out your paper, and you can just use a simple punch to punch your holes. This is actually the one I used as a silhouette file, so it cut it out for me, including the hole, and then made a perforated line that all I had to do was fold. And then I cut down some of these shapes and then did some stamping with different sentiments on it. But I got 4 wine bottle tags. Another one of my favorite go-to gifts, especially at the holidays, is homemade bread or jellies or gifts in a jar. Especially when my garden has a really good year, I love to make jellies, or even just give canned peppers. A lot of people in my family loved peppers. So I made some wraps that actually fit homemade loaves of bread as well as most mason jars. So you just you can make the strip as wide as you want or as thin as you want. Like this one's a bit wider. You can fancy them up using decorative scissors or like a border punch. And some of them I just left simple and straight and added a little stamp embellishment here. I've also left these blank. People can write in, like if I'm making them for someone else, someone can write in what the gift is, or I'll say homemade with some space, or homemade for you with some space, and you can fill in what it is as well. But again, they fit most loaves of bread, like the small mini sizes as well as a full size, and then most mason jars. And I did another cute gift idea, are these little tea pocket folders. You can fit at least one bag of tea, maybe two, depending on the size. There's a place where you can include a note if you want to. You could also stick a gift card in here. This is good as is. If you just want a little gift for a coworker or a shower favor, this would make a great shower favor. I've included it in a little gift basket for a teacher or dance instructor, things like that. And you can, like send a mug with this little tea bag, a gift card to Tivana or Starbucks, maybe some cookies, some chocolate, just kind of makes a cute little gift. And again, they're also good just by themselves as a little token gift. And there are templates for these online. There's several different variations. I kind of, just with everything that I was trying to make, I chose a simpler template. But again, you can make them to hold multiple tea bags, just one. And then I also made some of these Post-it note holders. I had a lot of squares, scraps, and so I thought that would be a perfect use for. I already had some pads on hand. And again, this is a simple template. They have all different kinds of variations online, different templates and tutorials that you can follow. I chose kind of a simple one just based on the scraps that I had on hand. The pads are about 3 by 3, so in total, like the square is about 3 1/4 and 3 1/4, so it fit some of my scraps perfectly. I just added a strip at the top as well. I tried to keep the embellishments on top kind of minimal, not too bulky, just in case people want to stick them in their bags, that they aren't too bulky and get destroyed a little bit. I also made some corner bookmarks. I made some of these in my last pad project as well. I use these when someone orders from my Etsy shop. It's a little free gift that I include with their order, but it also holds like some of the paperwork in the order. It kind of keeps everything together. So I made a handful of these with some of the bolder patterns. And when you make these, there are templates for these online as well, like different variations too, depending on what you're looking for. But in most cases, you just start out with a square, whatever size you want. And when you cut them down, you have to cut out a square, and you cut out a whole smaller square out of your square, and then you cut a triangle out to get the place where it hooks over the book page. So I was left with a lot of square and triangular scraps, which you will see throughout some of my other projects. I also made some standard bookmarks. I used some of the paper from the pad and used wet glue to glue it onto the cardboard backing from the pad. And just made sure that the pretty white part was up, because the other side was just like cardboard color, standard cardboard color. But the paper itself wasn't really thick or durable enough, so I wanted to give it a little bit of sustenance and make it a little stronger. So that's why I just used some wet glue to glue my paper down onto the cardboard, smooth it out really well, and make sure there was no bubbles and that it wasn't going to curl, and then cut it all down together, rounded the corners, punched a little hole with just a standard hole punch, and then tied some ribbon through. And I did use a little bit of fabric glue to make sure that the ribbon stayed in place, but Just thought those were cute. And I actually will donate these to a program called Cards for Soldiers that will use them in little goodie packs sent to overseas soldiers. I also made, with scraps, some mini note cards. And most of these are 3 by 3, so the scraps are just shy of that, like 2 7/8 by 2 7/8. And again, a lot of square scraps left from the various projects that I'd already done. So you can make them simple just by putting your paper on and letting the card base be your mat. These I rounded the corners just to give them a little bit of extra something. And when I got down to little scraps, I decided that I could make a few more cards. And my 7-year-old actually helped me with this project. She had fun. We just used a bunch of little strips and matted them. My daughter made this one, lined up staggered some of the strips, and then she used a little bit of Wink of Stella on the flower to give it a little shimmer and put that on. Again, more paper strips. These are some of those corners that were cut off to make the corner bookmarks. So some triangle scraps, another square scrap from a corner bookmark, and then some more triangles that I kind of put together just to be the background for an embellishment. And last but not least, I made 113 greeting cards. So that's a lot of greeting cards. Most of these will be donated to the Cards for Soldiers program, which within their goodie packs or little packets that they send to the overseas soldiers, they include handmade greeting cards that the soldiers can then send home to their families, since there are a lot of bases overseas that don't have access to shopping or even online shopping and delivery. So this is just a special way that they can send some love home, especially there's a lot of them that don't have access. They may be able to get mail, but they can't access email or don't have access to the internet. So again, I made 113 cards. Most of them are the A2 card size, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I used a lot of card sketches. And I know in the comments, several of you have told me that you are just starting out in paper crafting or card making. And so I wanted to kind of explain a little bit about card sketches. I will use these because I had when I did the cut aparts, I had a lot of journaling tags that I didn't use in my scrapbook pages. And so I was trying to figure out how to use them on a card. You can go online. Pinterest has thousands, probably more than thousands of these card sketches. You just do a search for card sketches. And you can use this for any size of card. You just have to figure out the measurements based on the card that you have. And they're a great way, especially if you have scraps to use up, you can find one with just about any size or any shape of scraps. And I use sketches a lot, especially when I'm doing like in mass bulk projects like this, because it speeds up the time for me. But also if you're just starting out, it's a great way to figure out card design. If you're not sure like what you should include on a card design, sketches are a wonderful way to start. So just to give you some examples, I had all of these little journaling tags to try and figure out how to use on a card. And so in most cases, I stamped a sentiment on it and then incorporated it using a sketch in some way. Here were some scalloped ones that I just stamped in the middle. And then you can see this one actually called for a half circle, but I had like a journaling tag that was shaped like this. And so I cut it in half and then, spread out the 2 halves across multiple cards. So this kind of goes to show you that you can follow a sketch exactly to a T, or you can just use it as a jumping point or a starting point for your card. When they give you shapes, you don't have to use that exact shape if you don't have it or if that doesn't work for you. It's just, again, it gives you a perfect example of the layout that you can follow. Here's another example of one of the journaling tags was already cut like with this fishtail banner. And so when I saw this sketch, I was like, oh, that's perfect. I know exactly what I can use that for. And then for my embellishment, I just fussy cut this little scallop circle that was part of one of the pattern pages. And another one, this one was a tag shape. I had several tag shaped journaling cards to try and use. And you'll notice in some of them I've matted Like I was able to mat them. Like this one already had a mat that I had, when I cut it out, it had the mat with it. Instead of cutting an extra sheet of paper to mat this tag, I simply used an ink pad and kind of inked up the edges to make it stand out from all the other layers. So I did that to each paper layer that I had, including my flower, just to kind of help it stand out amidst all the other patterns on the paper. And then this one isn't necessarily related to a sketch, but there was a bold pattern, kind of a big bold pattern that had already been cut up for some reason, and it was in like 5 or 6 inch strips. So I thought that would be perfect for a 5x7 size card. So I have a total of 4 5x7 size cards. Just used the pattern paper, and then took, again, this was another journaling spot that I fussy cut out of those cut apart pages, stamped my sentiment on it, and backed it with a, kind of grounded it with a fishtail banner, and then added another flower that I had fussy cut out of some other scrapbook paper. So I have a few of those. And then this one, I didn't add any other embellishments because with all the flowers there and all the flowers on the background, I thought that one was already busy enough. But you can see that I have a variety of cards, some with more layers than others. Most all of them I have used sketches on, just again to simplify it. There are some that are very basic, but a great way to use up your pattern paper. Pardon me as I reach across, but like this used up a lot of pattern paper. And these went together really quickly because I sat down and I just cut, I had already had all of the background mats cut. So then I just went through the pattern paper that I thought would coordinate well with the background mats, cut those down to size at the same time, and then went through my cardstock to get this white layer, or in this case, the gray layer that pops it up from the background. Kind of gives it a little bit of separation. I cut those at one time. I did all my stamping and cutting of my sentiments at one time, and then just sat down and got them all put together. So that one actually, that sketch went pretty quickly. I talked at the beginning about sometimes you have a cut apart that works great for a card, and then other times, you know, they're more suitable to scrapbooking, and you have to figure out how you can make them work for a card if that's truly what you're working on. And this was a cut apart, and I only had one of these, so I must have used the other one up on something else. But I saw this sketch and this cut apart, and I was like, oh, that's perfect. It looks just like the little Polaroid element that they have here on the sketch. So all I had to do is I stamped my sentiment down here, and, you know, was able to follow that sketch exactly. And again, this is a 5x7 card. You can see the difference between, like say the 5x7, this is a 5x7, and this is a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I thought I was done with this project at least twice, but had a lot of scraps left. And then happened to be looking online for something else, or I was watching, actually in one case I was watching a YouTube video and decided that I could actually do a little bit more. So I managed to make, after I thought I was done the first time, I think I ended up making like at least 10 more cards, full size, and then several of the little 3x3 cards. This was, I had already done this. I don't have the sketch printed out, but I had seen it on Pinterest. I had already done several of these cards, and then I happened to watch a Christy Marcotte video. She does a lot of 6x6 paper pad tutorials. And she had used this sketch, but then filled it in with some of her paper scraps that were in strips. And I was like, oh, I can definitely do that. I have a bunch of them that would fit in that. So I went through all of my strips of paper scraps that I had and managed to make 4 more of those that fit into that same card sketch. So this kind of goes to show you that you can adapt a sketch based on what you have on hand or happen to have left for your project. And then as I got down to even smaller scraps, you can see here's a card sketch that uses up some smaller squares and rectangles. Here's one that uses a bunch of little 1 1/2 square pieces. several of those. This is one that actually it used several different sizes of strips or squares. And I wanted to show this one just because I did this same sketch, but it looks like two totally different cards. In this card, I happened to stamp my flower and vase, and then had a little bit of, there was a solid gold paper in the pack, and I had a little bit of scrap left of that. So I stamped the flower part of the vase image on that gold and fussy cut those out, and then added a little glitter onto the center of the flowers. I don't know if you can see that, but that was done with this sketch. This card was also done with this sketch, but looks totally different, like a totally different card, just because I was out of background papers by this point. I used pattern paper as the focal point instead of the stamp image. And then just to spruce it up a little bit, I just used a normal hole punch to cut out some small circles, and then added some Wink of Stella to give them a little sparkle. Same with this one. I had a few larger pieces left, so I stamped an image, like a flower image, and then Thinking of You. This is the same sketch from the same sketch, but in this case I used pattern paper as the focal point and put my sentiment over here on the little strip. Once you get down to the nitty-gritty, you have a whole bunch of little bitty strips, little thin strips. And so I found this sketch, and I've kind of used it as one of my go-tos for each project I do. And again, you just kind of weave the paper strips together. And then I found another use for paper strips. You could just group them together to kind of make a background for your sentiment. I was, again, out of background papers by this point, so I pulled some embossed gray cardstock out of my stash and used that. And again, another way to use up some of those paper strips. Cut them into little fishtail banners and use them as the background to your sentiment. This one was a way to use up some of the squares. I had a few squares left from the corner bookmarks. I just cut them down a little bit, rounded the corners, and then put them on this card, cut a cardstock heart, and used some Wink of Stella. And when you're down to the really end of the project, and you have just a whole bunch of random miscellaneous scraps left, you can put this together kind of like a puzzle. I have not seen an exact sketch for this, because it's really based on what you have left. But you just kind of, I cut a gray cardstock piece for a mat, and then just kind of filled in my scraps, kind of laid them around and cut them down to whatever size I needed to be able to fit. So I probably could have done several more of these, but by this point I was tired, I was done. And I had 113 cards, so I figured that was plenty. So just in summary, from this whole project, out of 48 pages, I got 10 12 by 12 scrapbook pages, 113 cards, 14 of the corner bookmarks and 5 of the tall skinny bookmarks. I got 4 wine tags, 7 of the bread or jar wraps, 3 post-it note holders, 16 mini note cards, and 4 of the tea bag pocket folders. And most of these would be great as gifts. The mini cards make great, like I said, gift tags, lunchbox notes. My daughter loves to write in them and give them to her friends at school. You can even take the cards that you make and group them together in little packets and give those as gifts. Or obviously you can just make them and then you have your stash to pull cards from for probably most of the year, depending on what the occasion is. But for myself, obviously the 12 by 12 pages are all for mine and my daughter's scrapbooks. The long skinny bookmarks and most of the cards will be donated to Cards for Soldiers. The corner bookmarks, like I said, I use those within my Etsy orders, and then the rest of the items will either be for sale in our Etsy shop or at one of our future craft shows. So like I said, it took me over 16 days, but I got a whole lot out of this pad, and I think I picked this pad up on sale for $6. So I did have to add quite a bit of solid cardstock. I used at least 62 sheets of 8.5 by 11 for my card bases. These you could buy pre-made if you wanted, but I usually cut mine down myself because it's cheaper. And I used about 20 12 by 12 pieces as well, and that's for my 5 by 7. I use that for my 5 by 7 size cards, and then again just for a lot of the matting and the for some of the smaller projects. But I hope I've given you guys some ideas on how to use up your paper. If you're just starting out, I hope I've given you some ideas and tips on how to get started. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. I thank you so much for sticking with me through this. I know this was a long video, but again, hopefully you found it helpful. If you did like it, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, like I said, I plan to go through at least one pad a month, so there will be hopefully many more videos this year. Be sure to subscribe, and if you click on the bell, that will tell you when I have a new video posted. But thanks again, and I hope you guys all have a great day.